times throughout the year, and Surrender, I think, is one of the best mechanical players in the world and certainly the best player in South Korea right now.
All right, without further ado, let's get Group D underway. So please welcome to the stage our first competitor from Korea. It's Surrender.
Surrender following up on Hoy's spring champion victory. Of course, his teammate, Surrender, won summer.
And his opponent, the ladder god from China, it's OmegaZero.
They have yet to have a strong performance in HCT this year. Can he bring home the title?
Let's do this! Surrender versus OmegaZero.
오메가제로 선수랑은 첫
OmegaZero is my first round opponent, so I have practiced against his lineup the most. I think I have a slight advantage against his lineup.
虽然我觉得他卡组
Although I don't think Surrender brought a very powerful lineup, what I have observed from him at major tournaments is that he is a very consistent player.
Because I defeated him at the Summer Championship, I feel confident playing against him, so I hope I have the advantage.
He is someone who rarely makes mistakes, and he has a lot of skill, so I think he is one of the favorites.
Surrender versus OmegaZero. Let's rock!
We are ready to kick off the next match. Coming up today is going to be, of course, Surrender versus OmegaZero. I'm Raven, and joining me is Sottle, as always. I can't wait for this one. I've been waiting at least for a few days to watch Surrender play. I think he's absolutely incredible. He's my pick for the whole thing. I'm excited.
Tell me more about how much you love Surrender, Raven.
I love him lots.
Okay.
Lots and lots.
On the other side, though, it was interesting to me to hear OmegaZero talking about how he thought Surrender didn't have a very strong lineup, because I actually don't think OmegaZero has a very strong lineup. I think he has brought a lineup with him that has a lot of unfavorable matchups against both Warlock and Priest. And, well, you can't ban both of them. Like, one of them is
You can't just add an extra ban.
Right, I mean, unless your strat is just to give up a free win to one of those decks and target something else, which is, you know, viable. There are arguments for that in Conquest. I actually think OmegaZero's lineup has some holes in it.
All right, well, let's kick it off. Surrender going to start off on the Rogue. OmegaZero on the Aggro Druid. So neither of these players going for the Jade route, both going for Aggro Druids. I think they're ever so slightly different builds. OmegaZero actually has the Scalebanes in there instead of the Hydra package, so we'll see how that works out for him. But what do you make of this matchup as a whole?
I mean, it does often just come down to the trump card from the Druid side, which is Living Mana in a lot of situations, because Rogue can pick apart everything else very, very effectively. You know, Enchanted Raven runs into a backstab, a South Sea Captain buffed Patches runs into something else. The other big swing that the Druid can put together, thank you Hearthstone gods for illustrating my point, is Galactic Crawler. But on many, many occasions, I have seen the top Rogue players get an easy read on a Galactic Crawler opening and just not play Pirates and still win the matchup comfortably. That's how much spare power you have outside of the Pirate package in Rogue.
Yeah, well, let's see what happens here. OmegaZero does have the Corsair on one, and as we mentioned quite a lot on the back end of yesterday, at least when we were casting, was that the buffs are what make this deck for the Druid, not the minions per se, right? If you have the buffs, then you make your minions just awkward shapes for your opponent to deal with. Very, very similar to way Kelleset does for the Rogue. God, this is... Can we just control this match with our voices? I feel like that's what's happening right now.
We can definitely give it the old college try, Raven.
Okay.
I think both of these players mulliganed very well, though. Showed they understood the matchup. OmegaZero threw away a Tar Creeper, kept a Corridor Creeper. Did throw away Power of the Wild, which is borderline, but recognized he was looking for faster buffs. Mark of the Lotus, of course, has the Galactic Crawler, massive power spike in the opening hand. From Surrender's side, he kept a Backstab and a South Sea Captain, which is two cards I specifically called out when elaborating on the matchup. Backstab can just clear the early minions. South Sea Captain pulling Patches is just such a big tempo swing in your favor to then trade into a Firefly token. So I think both players set themselves up very, very nicely with these opening hands.
Yeah, no shouts and screams from the crowd on this one, as there is no Shadow Step in hand for Surrender. It's just your average coin Kelleset.
Kelleset double Shadow Step has a 0% win rate in this tournament.
It's really bad,
saying.
right?
Just saying.
No, this is Surrender and OmegaZero.
Oh, you're right. Such a...
But yeah, the Mark of the Lotus difference versus Power of the Wild is actually really huge, right? You know, you want to play minions on the same turn you buff in most of the time as the Druid, and the 2 mana cost of Power of the Wild can be a bit clunky at times. Surrender does now have the Shadow Step, so maybe we can just control this game. And but just probably going to just be a dagger up past this turn. Shadow Step SI7 Agent, extremely strong combo.
Yeah, the coin Keleseth play is not something you will often see in a lot of matchups. Tempo Rogue, despite being classified as an aggro deck, can be a lot slower than most intermediate players think that you have to play the deck. You can be patient, dagger on 2 a lot of the time, but this is just respect to the matchup he's facing. If you do nothing turn 1 against aggro Druid, they so quickly have the ability to swarm the board with a bunch of tokens already, and then suddenly the buffs are getting out of control. So I like Surrender trying to get an early grip.
Yeah, and we've got TJ with a very special guest going to be coming in. You got a glimpse. I think we might be going back. But yeah, TJ's with a very special guest to have a few words about this game.
Thanks very much, guys. That's right. I'm joined by Ben Brode over here in the hall for all these people watching the matches. Ben Brode, how you been enjoying the event so far?
It's been incredible. Did you get you watching these matches?
I would hope so. I'm casting them.
It's incredible. And the venue's nuts. I don't know if you're showing shots of the venue here, but it's like, it feels like we're in a castle/tavern. It's incredible.
Yeah, it really is. And what have you been doing here at the Amsterdam Marina thing?
Mostly admiring you.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been kind of sneaking around watching you guys cast. You're looking pretty good.
Do you want to trade places?
You guys are really good, so I'm a little nervous, so I'm probably not. I've been just kind of sitting around, hanging out with people, watching the matches, kind of sneaking around, kind of creepily, I guess.
I'm really good at designing cards, Ben Brode. I've heard you're really good at casting.
Yeah, okay. You can have my job. Fine.
All right, cast this turn.
There's a Corridor Creeper. There's a SI7 Agent. It's Surrender's turn right now. So he's got to make a critical decision on what cards to play out of his hand. And he's got some mana. And he's looking at his mana and he's deciding how much of it to spend. So, he could...
All right, Ben Brode, you're hired. Let's send it back over to the amateur casters, Sottle and Raven.
Okay, Ben. Now do it all again, but in rap form, please.
I'm just glad there are plenty of things that keeps Ben Brode very, very busy that stops him from casting because we'd easily be out of a job at this point. But let's get back into the game. The turn was expertly commentated by Brode there, but now OmegaZero still with this Corridor Creeper on board, as Surrender did not have the opportunity to be able to deal with it in the turn he developed this Saronite Chain Gang and the SI as well. But OmegaZero has to piece together a way to get through these minions, because I think we talked a lot about, yes, there can be one powerful minion on the board, but at least in the current state of the game, having multiple attacks, even of less power, is actually beneficial overall.
So something I do want to recap here, and it will kind of be in recap form, because we got a little distracted over the last few turns.
Yeah, they have mana.
Both of these cards on the far left of the hands here, Galactic Crawler and South Sea Captain, have been there since turn 0. They were there in Mulligan. And this is the little waiting game that's being played here. Surrender kept South Sea Captain because it's powerful in the matchup. It's useful for the tempo swing with patches. But since he's also seen OmegaZero keep a card and then not play it, he now has that read on Galactic Crawler that I was talking about and is playing that strategy where he feels he can win the game without Pirates. So there is a game of chicken going on here, and I think that
crab.
A game of crab going on here. I knew they hired you for a reason. With that Galactic Crawler, and I think OmegaZero, you saw him consider it last turn. He moused over it for several seconds thinking about whether he actually wanted to play it out that turn.
Yeah, and this is even more of a given with the Scalebane that's played. If the crab was living mana, right? That's one card that you have to hold till turn 5 mostly.
But he kept it.
Then, yeah, so he kept it, but you might say, might be an adventurous keep, but sure. But now, like, you Scalebane, you would have always played living mana on 5, so that is 100% done now. And you say that, but you also, there is the assumption that players hand track perfectly. It is a very difficult thing to do.
Agreed.
You can look away for a second and miss a card that was played, and then you're like, oh, I've lost the order of all the cards now. So we do talk with this perfect knowledge, and the players might not have that.
This guy's
Surrender, really powerful turn here, clears out the Corridor Creeper, isolates the Scalebane. which is significantly less powerful when it doesn't have friends to play with, and drops a 9-9 Edwin, pretty much setting up a lethal opportunity of his own. But now, finally, the Galactic Crawler can come out to play. But crucially, I think Surrender did have that read correct and was okay with the situation, because all things considered, he got a Swashbuckler Eaton, not his captain, and that card helped to buff his Edwin in the process anyways.
Mark of the Lotus, a good draw there from the Mark of the Asherage. Just going to help buff up these minions that little bit more. But look at this in Surrender's hand, the Whispers of the Old Gods. That's either a lot of 1/1s or a big buff to your board, which is absolutely insane. As you said, you know, Surrender was almost setting up lethal anyway. So with a buff in a turn or so, as long as he can keep hold of the board, this game could end very quickly, but not in the way we would expect.
Surrender does have to be careful here. He doesn't have much option with how low he is in terms of having to trade evenly on the board and just maintain this position. But he needs to be threatening lethal in most situations, because he's low enough also that a living mana draw on any turn from OmegaZero suddenly puts him in a horrible position.
Yeah, he can afford to just trade the deck, trade everything on board here, get the creeper down, and then Whisper the Old Gods go.
Yep.
Right? That's the general plan for Surrender here. He can fully trade and still have plenty of damage on board, because Aggro Druid doesn't have a removal tool. It doesn't have a way to remove minions without having minions on the board itself. So this is almost just an insurmountable effort here for OmegaZero to be able to do anything. There's living mana, but it's kind of a joke at the moment now. There's nothing he can do. Too much power.
Surrender has 21 presented, so this is the only play OmegaZero can possibly make. Go to 22 and hope there's no damage. This is absolutely the correct line. This was the win condition that I mentioned on the previous turn that OmegaZero and Surrender would have both been playing around. Living Mana was the card that had an availability to win the game. Surrender just had to set up a board that beat it, and did so exactly. Surrender with a 1-0 lead against OmegaZero's aggro Druid.
Yeah, strong lead there. The game of chicken or crab, whatever you want to call it, did go on for quite a while, and we saw similar things from some of the series yesterday as well, but Surrender ended up on top after game one. The Swashbuckler getting the Whisper of the Old Gods was huge there, just with Surrender being able to set that up and be like, well, Aggro Druid can't do anything. What are you going to do?
Yeah, he needed damage, and actually Swashbuckler gets damage consistently against Druid.
Brilliant.
Because there's all of the buffs. There's Claw, Bite, Swipe, Nash, so many options. Surrender just needed one. He got it.
Yep, Surrender leads 1-0. Is he going to take the series? Find out after this.
Yo, what's up guys? I'm Rosti, former Rank 1 legend, HCT finalist, and top coach for Gamer Sensei. Welcome to the Road to Worlds video series, brought to you by Blizzard Entertainment and Gamer Sensei. We're gonna follow the story of Surrender and his road to victory in the Summer Championship. The first game of Surrenders we're gonna follow is Game 2 of the Summer Championship quarterfinals. We've got Surrender on the Tempo Rogue against Empanizzado's Highlander Priest. It's turn 5, and Surrender is about to make the play of the tournament. Alright, so let's take a look at this board here. At first glance, it's really nothing too special. Surrender's just going to attack with all his minions and then pass off his turn to Empanizado, right? Not quite. Surrender decides to hold back the Shaku attack here, and that's so good. Even though Surrender gives up 2 damage and a potential card off the Shaku, he plays around the Potion of Madness. Because if he attacks with Shaku, then Empanizado can use Potion of Madness to kill off the 6-2 Edwin, and if that wasn't enough, he'd also get a random rogue card. So instead of giving Empanizado this amazing line of play, Surrender basically says, you know what? This Edwin's just good enough. And if you choose not to deal with the Edwin, then you're going to be taking 6 damage every turn. The punish for not attacking with Shaku is Dragonfire Potion. But looking at the board, Surrender's probably not beating Dragonfire Potion anyway. This is one of those subtle plays that sets top pros apart, recognizing when a card can and can't be played around, and then sequencing accordingly. And as we saw in this match, Surrender gets so rewarded for playing around the Potion of Madness that Empanizado had all along. Surrender's discipline and airtight gameplay earned him his spot in the biggest Hearthstone tournament. Thanks for watching. If you want to get live coaching from a pro like me, then head over to gamersensei.com and take your play to the next level. What are you waiting for? Be a winner today.
제 이름은 서렌더.
Hi, I'm Surrender from South Korea.
제가 제일 좋아하는 카드는
My favorite card is Leroy Jenkins.
Leroy Jenkins!
한국 음식도 좋아하고 서양 음식도 되게 많아요.
What's my favorite food? Well,
굳이 꼽자.
I like Korean food and I like Western food. So I'd like to mix both of them. So I'd like Western fried chicken cooked Korean style.
At least I have chicken.
제가 손 안 할 때는
Even when I'm not playing Hearthstone, I'm playing Hearthstone. I watch streams, research how to make better decks.
특별하게
Before a big event, I'll even dream about playing Hearthstone. It means I'm more focused and ready to take on a big event.
Surrender 1-0 up in this match so far. Favorite card is Leroy, unnerved.
Yeah, apparently. God.
I mean, yes, good card.
The amount of PTSD everyone watching this has just felt.
What if I said Leroy and Shadow Step to you? And Cold Blood.
Now you're just talking dirty to me, baby. I like it.
All right, this is a family-friendly stream, so we'll get back into the Hearthstone. OmegaZero on the aggro druid again, and Surrender going with the Warlock. Do you want to talk about the lack of Warlock ban?
The lack of Warlock ban from OmegaZero?
Yes.
I mean, like I said, his lineup has weaknesses against both. I think he came into this hoping that he would be facing more control Warlocks than cube Warlocks, and then he'd be in a position where he could just ban Priest and maybe have a better chance. But he, like I said, I just don't feel his lineup. I don't see what his overall strategy is, because he's going to give himself big holes like this, where if he runs into matchups like aggro druid against rogue, which are more coin flippy, if he doesn't win those matchups, he then suddenly has to run into unfavorables.
There's nothing else left, right?
Strategy.
Yeah.
Right.
And to be honest, if he runs into a Defile, there's a problem here
Yeah.
for him as this Q block, although isn't the ultimate control list that some of the other players have brought. This is the more sort of aggressive or combo-orientated one with the Doom Guards and the cubes to generate more Doom Guards. You still run Defile, you still run Hellfire, you still have heals, you know, there's a lot of stuff you can make work versus this Druid. So I believe the onus will really be on Omega to try and make his board health totals not add up to a Defile, basically.
And this right here, this exact situation is why I don't like Raven. Enchanted Raven, that is. Because the 2-2 actually contests the board very, very poorly against one of the biggest matchups in the entire metagame right now, which is Warlock, Cube Warlock and Control Warlock. You play it into your opponent's 2-1 that has already drawn a card, and I think you can see the intelligence of a player like Purple in this tournament, who's recognized that situation, cut Enchanted Ravens out of his aggro druid, and replaced them with Snow Flipper Penguins.
Yeah, I mean, cards might be good on ladder, but this isn't ladder. Right. Tournament mode effectively is very, very different.
Even on ladder, I think it's wrong. Like, you could bring Enchanted Ravens to this tournament and then just be banning Warlock 100% of the time, and then it would be okay. I would still argue that a 2-2 is kind of meh in a lot of spots, okay. But on ladder, I don't understand why you're playing Enchanted Raven in your deck, because you're just going to be running into a whole bunch of Warlock.
Depending on your meta read.
Sure.
Okay, well, the follow-up here, the Corridor Creeper is in hand for OmegaZero, so that's only going to get cheaper as the game goes on, especially when you look at, you know, Hellfire in Surrender's hand that he kept to be able to deal with a board on turn 4. Also, just look at some of these combo pieces here, just the weapon feels rough versus aggro to equip, because it's just a dead turn, you know, on turn 5. You just play the weapon and pass. But then the Void Lord afterwards is insane.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've rarely played Skull of the Minari on 5 and felt bad about it, even in aggro matchups.
You could just be dead on turn 5
You
or
could.
turn 6.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. That there's
Right.
a fear that you give your opponent so much extra push that, say, a Spellbreaker could just ruin your
Sure,
day.
yeah. I mean, Spellbreaker is for sure a huge deal, and that's not something that we've seen featured from OmegaZero. And I know I actually spoke to Muzzy about a similar thing. You know, how much of an impact do you think if you're leaving Warlock up, do you need to play Spellbreakers? And he said to me that in matchups like this, aggro druid specifically, it's not Spellbreaker that wins you the game. It's going, you know, minion, buff, and then buff again. You know, that's
Dodging the AoE, right?
Right, exactly.
Golaka has a target, but it's not really one OmegaZero wants at this moment in time. Maybe next turn, if say Patches survives or something, or even a 3-1 Captain, that's one way you could play around a Defile actually. If Captain trades this turn, he can you know, reduce this like 1 and 2 health, which is the scary moments from a Defile, by using the Golaka. Then there's the Mark of Yasharaj. You can actually get some benefit from gobbling up your own minion.
Great recognition from OmegaZero there, recognizes that not only does he not need to trade in that spot, trading is actively detrimental to him. He trades with Patches, he plays into Mortal Coil, he trades with the Captain, he plays into Hellfire. So the actual best value play around everything play there was Go Face. Go Face is not always just the stupid not thinking play, sometimes it's actually just correct.
So it's always the clever play. They can't kill you if they're dead. It's the rules I go by. OmegaZero now has to think about how he wants to go into Surrender's turn 5. Turn 5 itself is normally a relatively weak turn. We did just talk about the weapon, and equipping the weapon is strong, but the turn itself is weak. Without the coin, you cannot Lackey Dark Pact, for example, either, and you don't normally just play Lackey and be like, well, okay. Although Surrender has a chance at that because he knows there's no Spellbreakers in OmegaZero's deck. But no options either. But OmegaZero really does just have to settle the strongest into turn 5 possible.
OmegaZero needs a lot of pressure
Yes.
right now. He does not have any time to wait, because if you give an inch of breathing room to any Warlock deck, any control-ish Warlock deck in the metagame right now, around turn 5, turn 6, this is what they will do to you. Surrender disrespecting 9 power in play and just dropping this.
Because overall, you sort of combine turn 5 and 6 quite often, right? Into just one big turn. But this is, you know, there's a lot of power on the board. As you said, there's 9. There's already enough to kill a Void Lord, worst case.
Yep.
The Doomguard doesn't get through the 4-8 on its own. So outside of, you know, Cube, Dark Pact to like triple Doomguard in any given turn, this is very, very strong for OmegaZero, and now he can pile on even more pressure. And look again at the health on the board, right? It's pretty much all out of any crazy defiles, because there would have to be a 1 health and a 2 health used. And worst case, you know, Hellfire plus Defile is kind of insane, but also a relatively weak turn. So And that's the noise you make when you can double free Void Lord against an aggro deck. Got the noise one more time for us all? There we go. Thank you.
The bad news is that Surrender does not really have anything to do with his turn currently.
Reaching some notes this weekend
No,
so far.
my register has extended
Oh, yeah.
significantly. I don't know where these are coming from.
Wait till tomorrow and you'll be like, hello everyone. It's like, go even lower. This hand's kind of weird though, right? For Surrender.
Right.
He gets to double Void Lord, which is insane. You know, 0 mana, 9 drops with Crazy Taunt, basically. But the rest of his hand doesn't really get him anywhere. The benefit is, against aggro druid, they don't really have refill. Like, outside of the living mana, they don't really have a way to draw 5 more cards and put more pressure on. You clear the board once, and you're normally feeling pretty good about life.
Yeah, Hellfire Core there did seem like the best play, because also he doesn't want to draw extra cards right now. Like, every extra card he draws could potentially be a Doomguard, which is detrimental to his hand right now. He wants to summon guaranteed Void Lords, so he had an ugly-looking hand that kind of cleared some of the pressure from OmegaZero. In most situations, you'd look at that spot and go, well, I'd rather tap than just do this awkward, inefficient use of my cards. But A, he's getting really low, so life tapping without clearing minions off the board just threatens OmegaZero having lethal over the coming turns. And secondly, there are just 2 Doomguards sat in your deck that you just do not want in your hand right now.
Especially Gul'dan is going to, even if it comes to it, is going to lock out the game, I would say, for Surrender. If he gets to play Gul'dan this game and not just die, he wins. Right. So now Surrender's process is pretty much going to be, I need to get to Gul'dan, but this Void Lord is going to be absolutely huge. As you mentioned, he didn't want to draw more because the weapon actually pulls the demon out of a hand before the card draw happens, which is very, very important. If it was the other way around, makes the card just frankly less powerful. Just cast the rest of this game with noises.
Random noises with
ooh,
Now, the security that comes with that Spellbreaker and the fact that both Void Lords are now gone, so Skull of the Minari, if it pulls a Doom Guard, that's now just a bonus. That's just fine. He also now has popped open his trench coat and released the 3 small Void Walkers, so he's free to Dark Pact some of his own minions and heal up if he really, really wants to.
Let's not mess around. There's 16 health for 2 mana knocking about in that hand.
Right.
Like, that's actually insane since he's already on 8. This silence combined with this Dark Pact might just be the bad break here for OmegaZero. There's just no recovery with Druid, right? You know, especially against Warlock, even Living Mana, which is normally the saving grace of this point in any given Druid game, there's still another Hellfire, there's still Defiles, you know, there's still a million taunts to hit through, there's still Gul'dan. It's probably just not going to be enough at this point. Can't get through 3 of the Void Walkers. There's still 2 more left. Kobold Librarian is playable at this point, just because of the double Dark Pact.
That's actually just a better Dark Pact target.
Yeah,
now.
the Void Walker.
I actually really like Surrender not doing it on the previous turn, because obviously the Taunt minions were preventing damage in theory, and he had a second Void Lord in play, which was never going to get completely cleared by the
zero
board state
chance.
that he left behind. So if he was going to end up Dark Pacting a 1/3 Taunt this game, he was free to do it this turn always. There was just never a world where it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, and also you're not really planning on utilizing all of your mana for Giant in this game, right? Like that card, just you may as well just blot it out a little bit, because he doesn't need it to win. And this is the difference with an open deck this tournament. It shows that the players really know the matchups and really know the deck lists of their opponents. And okay, Surrender, just prove me wrong, make me look stupid, that's fine. Whatever.
He just wants an AA, apparently.
I mean, personally, I wouldn't have done this, but who am I? I'm on the casting desk. He's in the chair playing at the World Championship. So Surrender definitely knows better than me. I would have felt a little bit too scared to do that play.
I actually really don't like playing this. I don't think you need a huge minion in play when you have the win condition in your hand already on turn 10, which is Blood Reaver Gul'dan. You don't need to set up a race in any scenario.
I just want to get to turn 10 as safely as possible.
And but not only as safely as possible involves several things. 1, stabilizing your health total, so you have the Dark Pacts to hit on small minions to be able to do that. 2, making sure you have an answer for living mana. It's like the #1 card that's ever going to beat you in any scenario, so playing Kobold Librarian and Dark Pacting it, again, then digs you deeper into your deck towards Defile or whatever else you need to clear the board.
Yeah, and especially now, even if a Doom Guard was pulled, and that's 1 extra demon for Gul'dan to potentially summon instead of a Void Walker or Void Lord, it's 1 versus like a million taunts you have in the demon pool. It's not going to make enough of a difference, especially when the turn after the Gul'dan's healing for 3.
Right. The argument from Surrender's side, which I should present in the interest of balance, is, well, he can do all that this turn anyway, right?
And
so
it's still the turn before Gul'dan.
Why not front load the 8/8 Giant, and then if I need to go fishing for Defile or whatever, I can do that on this turn with the Librarian Dark Pact play anyway.
Yeah, and Surrender will no doubt be keeping tabs on, you know, the buffs that have been played. He's seen 1 Savage Roar as well. So he'll have like a maximum number of damage that OmegaZero can do in any given turn from now. And that is greatly reduced from the early game. Trade Dark Pact, go. I mean, why not?
I mean, there's what, 9, it's 6, 7 in play. Savage Roar being drawn is 10 more, which is 17. Plus the hero power is 8. Like, yeah, the max damage is 18. So there's literally no card that kills you. That's why not.
But why not?
All right, it looked maybe a tiny bit closer than it needed to be, but Surrender got there in the end.
Oh, that's why. One more minion on the board, one less Void Lord. Potentially.
I mean, the Void Walkers would just be, if you get 5 Void Walkers here,
you know I'm
it's enough.
joking.
I do know you're joking.
Oh, one less Void Lord, I know. The Giant could have been a Giant Taunt. That is going to be the game, though. Surrender 2-0 up. A lot of players have a lot of respect for him, and look at this. The focus, just the refresh, the shake-off after a win. It's like, right, two done, one more to go. Looking good for Surrender, I have to say.
Yeah.
Aggro Druid, I feel, not really been pulling its weight, or at least what I expected it to do in this tournament as a whole.
It's true. Even though I explained it the other way around in the beginning, where if you're playing Aggro Druid, you'd much rather your opponent was playing Cube Warlock than full Control Warlock. When you're talking about this weird strategy that it seems OmegaZero lineups has, but you can see these are some of the additional community areas, the tavern that we have here at this event. This is not just an esports event. There is a full Hearthstone celebration going on right here, and you can see people just having fun, jamming some games. I believe this is one of our community tournaments that we have running alongside the main event.
Yep, tournaments running every day, all day, and this is literally just across the way. I can see through the hall where it
right
is.
over there.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
it's
right there.
that way for everyone here, and all the players are just are playing some cool tournaments, some cool fun for the day, and we have Frozen and Nyria coming up as the next match once we are done with this one. It's almost impossible to say, but another great match coming up. This whole tournament is full of matches like these. Superstars going at each other in some of the best Hearthstone we've seen all year.
And honestly, I can't wait to see Frozen get started, because there are times where I, talk to players who are still playing the game at a high level and they just inspire me. And I wish I was
like
still,
when you talk to me.
Exactly, yeah. I wish I was still, competing at a high level, and I don't regret for a second where I've gone with my career, but I do miss playing the game competitively. And when I spoke to Frozen, heard about his strategy, heard him explain about how he ended up with the lineup he had and so on, like it was just a beautiful, touching moment.
Guy knows his stuff.
Right. He made me switch off Stan Udachi for my prediction for this tournament, and I love me some Stan Udachi. That's how much he inspired me.
Don't we all? But I love me some Surrender, and he's 2-0. But OmegaZero, they have to do quite the fight back here. This is going to be an Aggro Druid mirror. So I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but what are the differences in these lineups in terms of the Aggro Druids in the actual deck?
Well, for one, Surrender is playing Bitstide Hydra, whereas we're seeing Cobalt Scalebanes from OmegaZero. This is something that I harped on about for a very long time. In basically every aggro deck, you kind of have that decision of Hydras versus Scalebanes. And for the longest time, I was a big advocate of just playing Bitstide Hydra, because Bitstide Hydra is a Cobalt Scalebane that buffs itself +3/+3 when you play it, essentially. You just get an 8/8 to come down. So, if people talk about, Cobalt Scalebane's resistant to Dragonfire Potion. Well, so is Bittertide Hydra. It just hits for 8 afterwards instead of 5.
And the thing Cobalt buffs probably isn't resistant
right, exactly.
of Dragonfire.
So I'm actually a big fan of Hydras. I'm really happy to see Surrender playing them, but the game is mostly decided before turn 5, and if there is a comeback card on turn 5, it's not a big, thick minion, it's Living Mana. That's the comeback card if you need it later on in the game.
Savage Draw and Living Mana were the two throws. Savage Draw from Omega and Living Mana from Surrender. They're the ones they threw away in the mulligan, and for Surrender's trouble, he got patches. So that's a little bit unfortunate for him, but the rest of his hand looking pretty good, and both players having the corridor creepers. Like I said, the creeper wars a little bit more even here. I say the creeper wars, the tar creeper is a bit of a problem though for Surrender to get to, especially when there's a second one coming down, more than likely next turn from OmegaZero.
This is a potentially huge turn for Surrender here, though. He can go double Pirate with Power of the Wild. He does have to use his coin to achieve the same effect that he would have done, because he drew patches. Otherwise, of course, he would just be able to have patches on the board, hold on to his coin. But what it does is put a bunch of 2 and 3 health minions in play against what will be a 1/5 on his opponent's turn, some of which are Pirates, allowing him to just curve straight into South Sea Captain, potentially. Or just trade Corridor Creeper on the following turn.
You're using coin, but your follow-up turn isn't horrible in any way, shape, or form. Surrender has gone for the Captain coin instead, just to front-load the minions. And just get as much as you can on the board to try and maybe make this Corridor Creeper into Power of the Wild a possibility next turn.
Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, this might be better because he does have the opportunity. Surrender's very good at this game. He does have the opportunity now, as you said, to trade, discount his Corridor Creeper, then either by buffing first or get the Corridor Creeper down and then catch it in the buff as well would be the dream scenario.
Yeah, and the flexibility of that choice as well. You can trade 1 minion, 2 minions, depending on what OmegaZero does. You can really just mess with whatever you need to, but often a 5-5 versus 6-6 in this matchup, not really a huge difference. It's not the difference between it surviving a Dragon Fire Potion, for example.
Yeah, the crucial point about the way that Surrender has sequenced this is that his South Sea Captain is almost never going to die on this turn. That's why my mind sequenced it the way it did, because I didn't want to expose my South Sea Captain before I got value out of these pirates that you're also playing. But Surrender recognizes, hey, I can just play Captain here, and it's not going to be the target for a trade because it's really hard for OmegaZero to buff into a position where he can do that, and then that gives me so much more flexibility over the coming
it'll be like, oh no, my opponent Savage Roared. What a shame.
Right. It'd be something like Mark of Yasharaj on the Tar Creeper to trade through or something like that.
Okay.
Meh.
Well, OmegaZero does have the 2 Tar Creepers buffed up now, so it's kind of a pain to deal with. But again, Surrender does have this a few options available. Nothing feels insanely strong here just because of the awkward health of the Tar Creepers and the attack, actually. The buffs on the minions mean that they're not going to survive if they trade off here.
Time waits for no one.
Surrender letting the rope burn a little bit.
Both of these players right now, it might seem like there's not a great deal going on. Like the place always seemed like it was going to be Tar Creeper patches here, but Surrender is counting various things here, especially the implications of trading minions on any given point, because now we're seeing both players in a position where there's a card that's been held in hand for a significant amount of time. On Surrender's side, it was a card that he kept in Mulligan. So both players are tracking the cost of opening hand Corridor Creeper for their opponent right now very easily because they're just looking at their own one and seeing how much it costs for the opponent. So they're trying to make life as awkward as possible and not let either of them get that huge tempo spike. And it's Tar Creeper that's making all that possible. It's preventing any of these trades being able to be made.
Yeah, well, Hearthstone in general, the top players play with 2 hands, right? Because they've got their own hand and their opponent's hand that they consider. Not with literally.
I mean, it's a one. You can just play with your mouse. It's a one-handed game. I mean, I'm not going to judge. You can be doing whatever you want with your other hand.
I'm going to cast the rest of this on my own because just being rude.
Good decision.
Yeah, it's fine. You can join in. I'm friendly. But yeah, back to my actual point, which was a good point, is that gets even harder to do when Corridor Creep is something you can actively impact, right? In terms of the minion trade. It's not just playing around the cards per se. It's, does he have it? Doesn't he have it? It's I can make this playable for him or not. But also, Hearthstone, a very easy game to play while you eat, for example.
Yep. Look at him. Adorable.
I agree.
What to do?
He's in a mess now, though. This Tar Creeper chain has done a ton of work for OmegaZero. It looked at first like OmegaZero was like Surrender was going to dominate the board because he was so much wider than OmegaZero in the opening. But the constant buffs on those Tar Creepers have just meant that OmegaZero has been the one able to dictate the trades on his turn.
Yeah, and the thing is, Surrender holding back the minions, he's like barely traded with any of his own minions in any given turn. It's been correct from Surrender every time for the reasons we've explained, but now him being like shut out, he's just lost. It feels like he's lost so much potential damage. Like, at least one of these creepers could have died if he wanted to go in, but you just wanted that extra value. Look at this Power of the Wild, only just getting played now, and that was been in hand since pretty much the beginning, right? Just play one off and get a pretty big creeper onto the board as well. Another buff there from OmegaZero, and you can go relatively wide with this Firefly as well. So this is a huge swing turn for him here. Just taking that one extra step further than Surrender. And now, talk about a lot in aggro druid, but Living Mana would help.
It sure would. The Mark of the Lotus for OmegaZero might end up being the nail in the coffin here for Surrender if he doesn't pick up any great value himself, because him being able to buff his 5/5 Corridor Creeper puts him in a really awkward spot for Omega to deal with because he has Scale Banes and his own Corridor Creepers in the deck, so then you're dealing with a 6/6 going into a 5/5.
Yeah.
But OmegaZero being able to drop his 5/5 himself, then buff it up to contest, and then also, even I think, playing around precisely Mark of Yasharaj by strangely attacking into the minion on the previous turn. And Mark of Yasharaj ends up being the draw. That's kind of insane.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts. We just saw Nairi and Frozen just heading down, getting ready. Maybe they think the series is over, but I think OmegaZero is looking pretty good for this one, so he might be able to fight back here. But those guys are going to be coming up next. Looking forward to sitting back and watching that one from behind the scenes. See how that one plays out. But for now, it's all about Surrender and OmegaZero. Cycle was good for Surrender, but a lot of this now is kind of out of his hands. He makes his Corridor Creeper very vulnerable by trading for Tar Creeper, but again, it's not like Tar Creeper's a one attack on Omega's turn this time. It's been buffed so many times throughout the game, it's a threat in itself. His Corridor Creeper number 2 as well. OmegaZero happy to tank 8 damage, plays his own Corridor Creeper number 2, and this draw has to be magnificent from Surrender.
OmegaZero does need to be a little bit careful with how aggressive he's being with his health total. He's fine for now, but what you need to avoid is putting yourself in the position where your opponent plays Living Mana and has lethal set up on the board, and you then have to respect it and trade. OmegaZero was fine, he dodged that. His sequencing with the Tar Creepers early on was very, very nice. He puts himself back in the series, getting an important mirror matchup out of the way.
Yeah, and finally just got a win with that Aggro Druid as well. I feel maybe this is just the way I've been, recalling it, but I feel like Aggro Druid's been suffering a little bit so far in this tournament, and getting it out of the way is just a bit like, okay, it's gone. What does OmegaZero have left?
Yeah, I mean, I can give you the stats by class prior to this series. Druid was 13 and 10. And I would tend to agree that a lot of those wins are coming from the Jade Druids and not the Aggro Druids, apart from, I believe, Muzzy, who was performing very well with Aggro Druid on day 1. So, yeah, Aggro Druid has not been seeming to get the job done for me either in this tournament so far.
And OmegaZero still has Murloc Paladin as well that he has in his lineup. So another bit of an interesting choice. I think a few players were surprised at how much Paladin we've seen. As many players brought into this tournament, but it's not going to be played yet, as OmegaZero is going to be on the Priest, and Surrender, of course, only has his Druid left to finish up.
Yes. Very, very nice looking opening. Mark of Yasharaj and Mark of the Lotus, by far and away, in general, the highest win rate mulligan cards for Aggro Druid, just because your minions individually are just kind of weak and innocuous without buffs. So being able to land Mark of Yasharaj on Hans Molman, or just buffing up your entire board with Mark of the Lotus, you need it to be threatening over the coming turns. The buffs are actually much more important to your game plan than any individual minions. So Surrender has just got a beautiful opening hand.
Yeah, the Mole really makes it for me as well, because I actually would love, I'm going to try and find out at some point if this even exists, but the difference in win rate of Mark of Yasharaj when played on a Beast and when not would actually be kind of cool to see the difference. Because one card draw extra in Aggro Druid is the world of difference, I feel. But yeah, there's a Firefly as well, so plenty of the cheap tokens to get through. This is kind of the order you want to draw your deck in, if you could choose as the Aggro Druid. On the other side of this, though, OmegaZero with the Highlander Priest has all the early draw himself, so definitely not too bad. Doesn't have any of the big hitters, Raza, Anduin, of course, but for early game, not the end of the world, and also there's a chance that Living Mana could get Mass Dispelled.
I was going to bring up Mass Dispel. And amusingly, I was going to say that the interaction with Master Spell is probably kind of overrated in importance.
It's funny.
It's very funny.
Yeah, which was, you know me, so it's always my point.
Master Spell is actually a strong card in the matchup, but honestly, it's a lot of the time more impactful just silencing away a Mark of the Lotus Power of the Wild buff. Normally, Aggro Druid has done enough damage before turn 5 that if your response to their Living Mana is your entire turn is Master Spell, well, they'll just hit you for 10 with their dudes and kill you.
But they won't have much mana.
They won't have much mana. That is true. Got 'em. Yeah.
Well, Surrender not doing anything too heavy on the rocket science here, just cleaning out the mole, just getting as much as possible on board, mainly because there's double Firefly next turn, there's Mark of Yasharaj next turn, there's just Hero Power next turn, there's so many options that just utilizing the coin this early will gain him the biggest advantage in the game overall.
Whose hand are we looking at right now? Got him. Nice. Now.
Literally take you that long to work out Surrender's wearing the Planet Odd jersey, which is not black.
Yes. Yes, it did.
Might be clever in some ways, Saul, but
I am an absolute moron in some regards. I will happily confess to that.
glad we can get that on tape.
Yeah.
I'll be utilizing that soundbite in the future at some point.
Coming soon as a follower alert to Raven's stream.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mark of Yasharaj on this moment would draw a card, but does Surrender particularly need card draw at this moment in time? Like, is it that important? Obviously, the buff's nice for extra damage, but what's more valuable, do you think, getting the Firefly and an Elemental going wider for the buff next turn with Mark of Yasharaj? Just hero powering down the loot hoarder. There's so many options. Surrender gonna go the white board. I like it.
I was actually leaning towards jamming Mark of the Lotus that turn on 3 minions and trying to connect twice with it. That play might be biased by my caster vision right now, which tells me that if you buff on your 3, you walk straight into their master spell on 4. That might not even be something that Surrender is too worried about happening, but I was certainly a big fan of trying to connect twice with a buff effect that turn. Surrender, just as you said, went wide. He's trying to get the maximum initial impact out of a buff.
Okay.
Can I take all of them?
I was gonna say, I think you could just close your eyes and pick one. You'd be pretty happy against the aggro druid here. There's also a chance that Surrender might even consider just Tark Reaping the turn after. If, you know, it's an option, and then go for a really big buff. I mean, that is greedy, but then you step away from the on-curve answer to the buff board.
Quickly.
What are you feeling here? There's a tiny fear with horror, is that if next turn is buff, then you just horror's kind of pointless at this point.
Right.
I was surprised it was the Spirit Lash over the Dragonfire though. If we removed horror as a choice.
I was going to say
Dragonfire is just a six mana clear the board. Though.
Right, he does have Blood Mage in his hand, which I think is what's helping him lean towards the Spirit Lash there. In that case, if he didn't see buffs come down, he'd have an insane turn with Blood Mage Spirit Lash. If he did see buffs come down, he'd have a very good turn with Master Spell. I think that's what lent him towards taking the Spirit Lash, because it covered the maximum amount of options on that next coming turn for him.
I do like the options here as well. Golaka onto the Pirate does have a good amount of value now. You've just seen the Master Spell used to remove the buff, so now your minions are more, or less resilient, should I say, to AoE, or to the cheap AoE.
I do still wonder whether Surrender should have gone in earlier with the buffs, because I wasn't even factoring in Shadow Word Horror either when I was making that calculate. Like, I was worried about running into Master Spell, but with Shadow Word Horror in OmegaZero's deck as well, you know, jamming one Mark of the Lotus onto this board that you were making wider and wider and wider was also just very likely to run into that as well. So getting damage through before those 4 mana options become available might have been something that Surrender could have looked at a little bit earlier on.
Just stuttering the buffs, right?
Time waits for no
No Druid of the Swarm or Hero Power now. Druid of the Storm is the taunt with the 5 health. Feels more reasonable because, again, you're kind of afraid of the cheap AoE now, and the 5 health plus the Golaka can often, you know, it's survivable enough to get the work done. Final Spirit Lash comes down 1. Extra drawn Pyro. Pretty big deal with Silence, but still a lot of damage on the backswing for Surrender, even with the buffed heal with the Thanos Spirit Lash. Surrender can still make this work. Has the Corridor Creeper combined with Savage Draw, I believe if the board was untouched, that would set up lethal.
8, 9, 10 in play, he'd heal to 21, and you would have 11 more from Savage Draw Hero Power.
Surrender's good at this stuff. Ooh, okay. Now there's Pyromancer and the Potion of Remembrance, which can be used to steal the 1/3, trade it into the Golaka, and you also clear the mole by, you know, like sort of the collateral damage at that point, and only really leaving up the Corridor.
You don't then contest the Corridor Creeper on the turn after, though, because all you leave behind is your Pyromancer, right, which can be taken down quite easily by the opponent. So you also do have the option to just Cabal Shadow Priest the 1/3, which puts a 4/5 into play that can then fight against the 5/5 next turn if you do go for the Pyro Potion of Madness play. So I could see that being an option as well. But honestly, I would not argue with any conviction against either of those lines.
Yeah, but mainly for me as well. He did end up going with the Shadow Priest, of course, but for me, like the Scream feels really good as a follow-up to that Pyro turn. If you trade away the Pyro and then they play some more minions, Scream, and then just go after that.
And then I guess in your world, you want to just Scream their board one turn, then you just jam Anduin, and then you just kind of take
kill
it.
minions.
I can see that working too, yeah, sure. I would not argue with any of those 3 lines.
First time for everything.
I remember once you said something I didn't argue with. It was a Wednesday about 18 months ago.
Was it I'm Gonna Go?
That was it, actually. Yeah, now that
there
you
we go,
mention
yeah.
it.
I'm leaving and never coming back. Oh, okay. Our Creeper's finally going to get dropped now from Surrender along with this buff, so Surrender's still fighting. But again, we can see Scream, the 4/5 available if the cards align to be able to get some work with that Pyro done. Shadow Wave Pain pretty good as well now. Leverage this hard turn actually.
I think Scream's perfectly viable. Scream is obviously also something that you're happy to line up against Living Mana. If he has a clear this turn with the Pyromancer, he might choose to go that way and hold on to the Psychic Scream. So he could Pyro, silence the Tar Creeper, then Potion of Madness it, and then trade it into the Corridor Creeper, and then trade away the Cabal. Yeah, he can definitely clear this turn in more than one way, actually.
Yeah, it's a couple of ways to go around.
So that way he gets to hold on to the universal clear of the Psychic Scream. Using his situational options first, keeping the catch-all answer for later on.
Yeah, the only drawback to holding Psychic Scream is that it's a 7-mana card. Yes, it throws all the minions away, but it's off more often than not literally your whole turn.
That's true.
So you are reduced in what you can perform in terms of AoE. It's very similar to Blizzard versus Frost Nova as a stall, right? You normally want to use the expensive ones because the cheap ones are way easier to come back. Obviously, Pyro's way tougher.
Yeah, I was going to say
clear with.
my counter to that would be that like a good Pyro clear will probably end up costing you 5, 6, 7 mana anyway, so it's not a great deal cheaper in total than Psychic Scream.
Now, a little bit miserable here for Surrender. Just go like a crawler, doesn't pile on that much pressure. That draw really did need to be Living Mana.
Which, funnily enough, would lose him the game on the spot. But
yes, but from if you're the Druid,
I understand. Yep, seems good.
This is the scary part, right? Especially we can see OmegaZero's hand. Well, OmegaZero has a lot of freedom to do almost what he wants this turn.
You see a lot of nervous energy in both of these players right now. Surrender's eyes just darting left and right, chewing on his lip. OmegaZero has been fairly animated by his standards for most of this series, I think, because it largely has not been going his way. We've seen quite a few facial expressions, hand gestures, fidgeting back and forth in his seat. Both of these players do not look 100% comfortable with the scenario right now.
Yeah. Living Mana. Say hello and say goodbye. There's also just Velen Spirit Lash. If he really wants, right? You know, you could say you're having no mana for the rest of the game, but also Surrender's got no cards. There's no way to generate cards. You can go up to full health and leave Velen on the board.
Scream's just more troll, though.
What? We swap places?
I mean, I'm down to making people feel miserable. You were talking about which one was funnier.
Oh.
I don't care which one's funnier.
Surrender's face.
I care about which one makes my opponent hurt more deep in their soul.
That explains a lot of our casting dynamic.
Yeah.
I understand now.
Yeah.
Surrender. Might have to surrender this one. So OmegaZero is going to even it up, just couldn't get there, and even if the screen wasn't there, there were more answers from OmegaZero in his hand. You know, without Scream, Velen Spirit Lash still isn't that bad.
Right.
And I was even considering the turn before that the Velen could have just been dropped. There was only a Galactica, and then you say, well, what are you going to do? Kill Velen? Well, you can't. And if you do kill it, great. If you don't kill it, I'll just keep it. And still have Spirit Lash for the turn after.
Essentially, OmegaZero was in control of that match for a very, very long time, since the Master Spell combination.
Yeah, we're going to be back with a huge Game 5 for both of these players. Don't go anywhere.
Coming up next, Frozen versus Nairea!
我是来自 OM 战队的 Jason 周，来自中国宁波。
我是 OmegaZero，来自中国广东。
我之前参加过蛮多次那个 HCT 的比赛，现在是代表中国去打阿姆斯特丹最后的那个世界总决赛。今年 HCT 它是通过每个季度选出来的，所以高手比较多，所以打这样比赛会让我很兴奋。
我大概是从公测的时候接触炉石的吧。然后一开始可能就是个人兴趣，然后后面的话就接触一些比赛，然后慢慢的出一些成绩，现在可以说已经转入职业了。
中国的像 HCT 的这个选拔机制，它是通过各种比赛或者天气的积分，然后选拔出来一些选手，然后这些选手去打一个预选赛，最终能进入我们的黄金的超级联赛。其实总的来说，这样的选拔机制是一步一步的，能够筛选出中国最优秀的炉石选手去打这样的比赛。
我在国内的话，参加过很多比赛，像环境赛啊，以及超级联赛、黄金总决赛。我拿过的成绩有环境赛的成都站冠军，还有2016的秋季赛超级联赛的冠军，以及黄金总决赛的冠军，以及2017的秋季赛超级联赛的冠军。
练习的话，大概应该就跟队里的队员一起训练，比如说特兰克斯啊或者查赫本这样，就比较熟的朋友一起练习。
这次的话，我对自己还是蛮有信心的。
上次拿了4强嘛，这次也希望起码能进个4强嘛。
如果是目标的话，我肯定是希望能夺冠。
OmegaZero可以是中国第一。反正我跟OmegaZero去的话，我感觉我们俩实力在所有人里面应该中上还是有的。
我们会用胜利来证明中国选手的实力不弱于任何一个赛区的选手。
我们会尽自己全力把无限红旗插到阿姆斯特丹的。
Going to be the final game of this series. Everything on the line here. Surrender versus OmegaZero. Surrender was 2-0 up. Well, OmegaZero is fighting back. I just said 0 many times.
You sure did. Actually, was very interested in watching that piece that featured Jason Joe and OmegaZero himself, because OmegaZero is just a phenomenal player with a storied history. I remember before the Chinese players really started to come back and play in front of our eyes repeated times over and over and over again, we'd ask a lot of the Western players, do you know anything about the guys who've come over from China? Most of them would say, oh, I've heard of OmegaZero, I know he's a really good player.
Yeah.
And listening to him talk there, you can kind of see why that is. He was being asked about his tournament record. It's like, yeah, I've won this tournament and this tournament. in this tournament. And this other tournament, there was a culmination of basically all the other tournaments that I'd won. Yeah, I won that one as well. And yeah, then there was this other one. Yeah, I won that. He just kind of went on. He had to stop, take a breath, and then keep listing tournaments that he'd won. Guy's a freak. He wins a lot.
That's what we all dream of.
Yeah.
Last game, though, it's going to be Paladin. You mentioned it briefly earlier, but it's going to be against the Aggro Druid, of course. What do you think of this matchup? And Paladin, OmegaZero is playing the Blessed Kings package, is playing Fincher too, and double Spite Witch. All cards that can make a pretty heavy impact in this matchup.
Yeah, I think generally when you're up against Aggro Druid, you want to be playing the quicker list a lot of the time. You want to be maxing out on your Knife Juggler into whatever, into Call to Arms, like kind of curve to blow them out as quickly as possible. But again, much like Living Mana is the breaking point in for a lot of Aggro Druid matchups, when you come up against Aggro Druid with Murloc Paladin, Call to Arms is a really big key to be able to come down and contest the wide board states and take them.
OmegaZero passing on one never feels good, especially when Surrender's going 1-2 already here with the minions. Like, this is already kind of tough to fight back from. As you said, Call to Arms, which is in OmegaZero's hand, is going to be useful, but that's a turn away yet. And already look at this hand. Bloodsail Corsair, buff, go.
And already, I think this is great recognition of the situation here. He has to coin this Rallying Blade. He can't just contest this board state with a 1-1 or even a 2-3, because if he plays a 2-3 Rockpool Hunter and any buff comes out from Surrender, then he's just in a horrible spot, and coin Call to Arms just is not going to contest. But, well, I'm sorry, OmegaZero. It looks like Surrender had you beat both ways, because he had the perfect answer lined up for that Rallying Blade.
Yeah, and I think we just saw it. If you're just looking at OmegaZero's, body language at that point, there was the sort of sit back, sit forward as it happened. And when you're in this game, the final game of the series, you need to win. Every single card that is played either makes you feel very good or very, very, very bad. And Surrender, almost a smile there as he's like, okay, this is the moment where I think I got him. This is a lot of power on the board. Surrender's just going to be 100% checking his plays here. Wants to, do I kill the Murloc? Do I leave it up? Do I smoke? Do I not? There's only one minion there, one decision. It's a tough decision still.
I don't know if you caught it, but during that turn where he destroyed the weapon, buffed his whole board, etc., it looked like he mouthed something which may have been directed to himself, may have been directed to his opponent. He was head down looking at his game plan. I really hope it was really BM. Whatever he said in Korean, can we get someone who can lip read and translate Korean?
I can.
Please? Oh, go ahead.
It was Monk Hands. for OmegaZero, because it was a bad scenario, like you said. Surrender had the answer either way. Now this Power of the Wild. Just game ended at this point. I will note as well that OmegaZero is only running one Righteous Protector, so even the chance of getting double double early on to be able to just make these trades at least last a bit longer, it's very, very slim. Zero comes down. Gloomy is kind of a funny card, but that's just the pick. The pick didn't matter. Surrender takes the series 3-2 over OmegaZero. He got off to a great start. Omega started fighting back, but it was not enough. The Aggro Druid got there. Quick end to a very strong series.
And I really do have one or two questions about OmegaZero's lineup. I think he's left himself potentially weak to both of the